Thank you all for coming out. My name is Pablo De Ocampo. I'm the director and curator of Moving Image here at the Walker Art Center. And I'm going to begin tonight's program by acknowledging that the Walker Art Center sits on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homelands of the Dakota. This moment in the year is usually one of the moments where a thing that we kind of talk about a lot with these acknowledgements is how this place where we live, Minnesota, in Dakota means the Dakota word, it's derived from the Dakota word Minnesota Makoche, land where the water reflects the skies. And I've been very anxious for these spring moments because it's one of the moments where I feel like the meaning and the weight of what that phrase means of this place really comes alive. But it's been weird because there hasn't been snow and things haven't melted, but it's still whatever. We are here tonight for another weekend of programs with Alison O'Daniel over there. As a part of Alison's ongoing cinema residency with the Walker Are You Listening? Alison was here a few weeks back to show her film Tuba Thieves. This weekend we are here to look at a couple films with Alison that feature deaf characters but are not made by deaf artists and filmmakers. We're going to talk a little bit about those. This is a very special night tonight in that we are watching Compensation by Zeinabu Irene Davis, who's just joined us from California. Zeinabu has been here 3 times at the Walker before. And so we're excited to welcome her back. Show Compensation in the past, other films of hers. And so tonight is going to be a really beautiful and wonderful conversation that we're all dying to find out what they talk about between the two of them. It will be a bit of a free-form conversation between Alison and Zeinabu, both about Compensation as well about the Tuba Thieves. Raise your hand if you saw Tuba Thieves. No shame if you didn't see it. It's totally fine. I'm glad a lot of people saw it. It's hard for me to go to more than one thing a month, so totally get it. No shame. I'm joined by Liz up here, who's doing our interpreting tonight. If you were here for the Tuba Thieves, you heard my spiel, which is that a core part of this residency with Alison is thinking about deafness and sound and listening in cinema and what that looks like, both as an artist and I think as a curator here at the institution. What we've really been trying to do is take up the charge to think about what that means from the presenting point of view. So you see that we're doing some live captioning here. We have ASL interpretation for the talk. We are trying a lot of new things, some of which I think are working, some of which are us learning them as we're doing. So if you're here and you're partaking in some of these services and you have a thought hey, you could do that a little better if you did this, come find me, come find anyone, talk to us. We're totally game to always talk and think about those things. What are my other things I need to say? This program is funded in part by a grant from the National Endowment of the Arts, funding a kind of a larger sphere of programs and projects that we're working on here at the Walker, thinking about accessibility in the cinema. So, stay tuned for some more things that might happen in the future, including Alison coming back in about a year to do something new. A huge shout out to Justin and Ryan, who are tech people tonight. They're the ones behind the scenes making a lot of these things work and magically appear on screen, make it so we can hear and see things properly. A shout out to all of our team who are taking tickets and all those things. There's a lot of people that make these things happen. I mostly just stand up here and say a bunch of things in a microphone and don't do all of the very important things that make the night come together. I think those are all of my notes for tonight. I'm going to hand the mic over to Alison, who's then going to hand it to Zeinabu. We're going to say just a couple minutes. We'll get on with the film, come back here for conversation afterwards, have some time for Q&A. You kind of know the drill. All right. The film's about 90 minutes. There's my notes. Your turn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alison. I'm a white woman with brown bangs and shaggy hair and glasses, and I'm wearing all black. And I'm really pleased to be here tonight and to be in conversation with Zeinabu after this film, which has been a really, really meaningful and extremely important film to me for many, many years. And I will speak very openly that as a deaf, hard of hearing person, and as a deaf, hard of hearing filmmaker, I haven't seen very many representations, like I can count on one hand with only 2 or 3 fingers, representations of deaf people that feel extremely authentic. And sometimes people ask me, like, well, who are the people who've influenced you? Like, who are the deaf filmmakers who have come before you? And there aren't that doesn't exist. Like, there are deaf filmmakers who are in the same age as me, and we're getting to know one another's films, and that's really exciting. But we haven't had examples of deaf filmmakers making films. And so what we have had is quite a handful of films that tell stories or show representations of our experiences that often I think are a little hard to watch and hard to swallow, because they can stay in a realm of, so there's this thing that happens a lot of times when hearing people encounter the deaf and the hard of hearing, where their minds are really, really blown when they start to encounter like the details of deafness. And if you are on the deaf spectrum, you hear those anecdotes and those stories all the time. And it's exhausting, because you kind of have to like, okay, also I'm saying this and I want all hearing people in the audience who've never been around deaf people to also like meet deaf people and have your minds blown. It is amazing. And our community should be more integrated. But there is this kind of common experience that happens a lot. And so I've been fortunate to see a few films, and Compensation is one of the shining stars, where I felt so understood and given space and appreciated, and kind of like the definition of intersectionality. And so I am thrilled to, after many, many years of like absolutely cherishing this film, being able to have a conversation with the filmmaker and with a public who's getting to see the film. And so with that maybe as the foundation of just sort of talking deeply about like what it really means to have been able to partake of a film that made me feel so human, I'll maybe just like put that out there as an intro, and then we'll dive in much deeper. And so I'll first just say thank you for making this film. And then I will turn over this mic to Zeinabu to give an introduction to the film. And then I hope you all will stay afterwards and listen to and participate in our discussion. So thank you. And thank you so much to The Walker for hosting this. And thank you so much over and over and over again, 1,000 thank yous to Pablo for just stewarding this. It's really beautiful and amazing to stand here. So.
Yes, definitely shout out to The Walker for being here for so many years. I've been here before there was a silver building next door. So it's been a long time. Compensation played here, I think it was in 2000 or 2001. It was before the first baby that came out of his body. So it's been a while. But I wanted to just tell you, because I don't think anybody was here who was there for when it first played here. But when we came to, and I'm saying we because my husband is the screenwriter of this film. Mark Arthur Cherry is the screenwriter. And I came to St. Paul to be a reader for a nonprofit organization called Independent Television Service, ITVS. And I was reading grant applications for filmmakers, and we were bored, and I wanted to do something fun. And so we looked in the free newspaper, and we saw a picture of a black woman who was performing at this place called the Northern Sign Theater, and it happened to be Michelle Angela Banks. Mark had already written the screenplay for Compensation, but we didn't have a deaf character in the screenplay at that time. But when we saw Michelle Angela Banks perform and Waiting for Godot, we stalked her because she was such a powerful actress. I knew I had to have her in my film. And so this place, St. Paul, was the reason why we put Michelle Angela Banks in this film, was because we wanted to have a representation of a black deaf woman, because I hadn't had any encounters with a black deaf person before Michelle, but I knew that it was important to try to incorporate that into my work, because my work has been about trying to expose audiences to different images of African American women or images of black women from all over the world. So that was what was important to me and continues to be important to me. And so we did things so we could work with Michelle and learn about deaf community members in Chicago where we were based. And Michelle and various people from Chicago helped us research and learn more about deaf community, black deaf advocates, etc. Reread the script, worked with us, and incorporated different things. So I'll be curious to see what you all think of the film 25 years later. And I'm happy for you to see this film, and I'm also sad to have you see this film this way. This is one of the very last times you'll see the film this particular way. You have to give it up for Pablo, because he worked his behind off to get this film for you, because it is not in distribution right now. The film is being restored by Criterion and Janus Films right now. It's going to be re-released in the fall. So this is the 16 millimeter print. It's my personal print, which I'm not allowed to screen. So y'all on the QT over here, okay? So, he got permission for us to be able to share it with you tonight. So this is one of the last times you'll be able to see the 16 millimeter print, and in the fall, the new digitized print with better sound, which I can talk to Alison about when we talk later. A better sound and better image will be released in the fall. So hopefully you all will be able to come back and see it when that is able to come out. So looking forward to talking to you all after the film. Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was just incredible to watch again. And it's been a few years since I've seen it. And okay, so I think I actually want to start with the title, with compensation. And I'm curious about the title and the meaning of the poem for you. And if you could maybe speak to that a bit. In the poem is divided in two parts, and the film is divided in two parts. But I wonder if you could speak a bit more. It's interesting because when I read the poem, I read it very differently than the priest read it to Arthur. And it was so beautiful to hear his intonation and his reading of it, and it gave me a lot of actually very different meaning to the poem. So I wonder if you could speak to it a little bit. And maybe I'll say one more thing about it, or not about the poem, but about the word compensation, which I'm curious if you know this, which, so compensation for me is my biggest influence in The Tuba Thieves, because compensation is one of the things you're tested for in a hearing test. And so so I've been talking about this for 15 years, compensation from the hearing tests, which is that in audiology, you're tested on, how much you can understand when you can't see a mouth, or you don't have signs. And so you're getting part of whatever's being said to you, and then you compensate and you're filling in all these gaps. And so it's a part of, so you didn't know about this.
No.
So,
But that makes me understand your film so much more too.
Yeah.
Whoa, ooh, light bulb.
so backing up, I mean, before I just said that, can you just talk a little bit about the poem and the two stanzas and what it meant to you in crafting this film?
Whew. Okay. I had to deal with the mind blow first, okay. Well, I had to back up just a little bit because you and I work a lot in like ways that I didn't realize, because we use like people who are real and true to us, like our friends. And I made another film called A Powerful Thing, and the actress who's in A Powerful Thing was one of my best friends, and she's not an actress, she's a dancer. And in order to keep her into character, I was shooting in Yellow Springs, Ohio, where I was teaching at Antioch College. And I gave her the poem compensation because at that time in the early 90s, she's a dancer in Brooklyn, and she was losing a lot of her friends to AIDS, HIV. And so I gave her that poem compensation because Paul Laurence Dunbar's house is in Dayton, Ohio. And that's very close to Yellow Springs, Ohio. So that was kind of like, I wanted her to stay in character while she's waiting for the lights and everything else, you know, filmmaking, hurry up and wait. Mm-hmm. So that was the impetus for this film. It came out of her journal entry, for writing about her experience as a dancer and losing people. And that poem is so powerful, it's so short. And Dunbar's life was so short, to be cut down from tuberculosis at the height of his career. You know, I mean, he was the Michael Jordan, he was the Beyonce of his times, you know, but that poem just encapsulates so much. It's like the beautiful and the ugly all in the same time, the pain and the mercy all at once. So I just really had this strong reaction, or resonance, not reaction, a resonance with that poem. And I just felt like we wanted to encapsulate it in some kind of way. So my way is to do it with visuals, and my husband Mark, who's the screenwriter, his is to do it with words. So he wrote those beautiful letters, you know, that kind of pull that together. And then the way we work together is kind of like, I give him the characters, but he writes the words and flesh out the characters and stuff like that. So I don't think I quite answered your question, but you kind of get what my process is in trying to figure out how to pull these things together, because I think in both of our films, Two With Thieves and Compensation, you see how powerful or how much we are influenced by poetry or language and sound as words, and that is like tantamount. That's what we want you to listen to. You know, that those are things. We're just not saying words just be saying words. We want you to listen, to hear this language that we're specifically using and how we're using it here in this medium that can encompass all these other arts. So I think that's what I want the audience to kind of, at least the ones who've been able to have the fortunate experiences seeing Compensation and Two With Thieves, I hope you get something like that from both of these films at least.
Yeah, I especially with the Malaika and Nico couple storyline, like you really do feel the grappling between them of that, the beauty, the mercy, the violence of the situation, and the sadness and the grief, the deep grief that they are both, have to deal with in that relationship, because they, differently from Melindy and Arthur, they get to continue. They get to make choices about how they continue. And so there's all this potential for how they're going to continue to deal with the reality of their situation. Whereas Arthur leaves and Melindy doesn't get that option with him. And so you feel that kind of weight of what is in the future or what is cut off, and the difference between these two times. I guess one of the other things I was curious about, so I've only ever seen this film on my laptop.
Oh,
I know. Okay, I guess we're done. So it's amazing.
Thank you, Walker.
Yeah. So it's amazing to get to see it. I mean, I also love seeing 16 millimeter that has all of its like marks, and it's amazing.
Well,
it's
that
like,
part I could live without. But,
I know, but it is truly like the tactility of it. Oh, I love it so much. So I know that it's a travesty that I've only watched it on a laptop, but as a deaf person, that means that I've always been able to turn on captions. And so, right. And so, sitting in the theater and watching it, this is a like circular question, because when I started making The Tuba Thieves, I was trying to figure out in the very beginning if I could not caption the film. And so I wanted you to always, I know that's like, it's hard to imagine if you've seen the film now, but what I wanted to do was always show the source of sound. So I was trying to think of is there a way to not have to rely on the captions, but to make a cinema that tells you what the sound is through the image. And your film does that. There's a few moments where it drifts away and you need captions for certain things. But a lot of times it's like you're seeing a stockyard and what the sound is exactly what you see. And that happens throughout the whole film until there's the moment where Melindy's character and somebody at the church are greeting people and they're saying, hello, hello, hello. And that's the first moment where it's super destabilizing for a deaf audience, because suddenly it's the history of watching cinema where you don't have access to information. But the patience it's an interesting thing, because there's such a long history of not being able to trust filmmakers who do something like this. But then your film, as you watch it, you keep seeing representations of the reality of deaf and hearing people interacting, having access to certain bits of conversation, how signing will skip over some speaking, how sometimes the signing skips over hearing capability. And so there's this thing that part of the reason that I gush about this film is that it feels so deeply real. It is so realistic to the experience, and the research is so it's thorough. And so can you tell me a bit about the period of research? I would love to know. I was going to ask you about the theater that you went to in St. Paul, but you talked about that in the intro. So from that moment of seeing Michelle Banks, which, by the way, Nike Prince, the lead actor in my film, Michelle Banks is like one of her idols. So when she saw that this film was playing, she hasn't seen this film before, but she knew Michelle, and she was like, "Is Michelle gonna be there?" And she just absolutely adores her. So that's a nice connection between our films. But I'm curious about if you could speak and talk about like the lengthy period of your research from when you first saw Michelle perform to really transforming what must have been your original script, because the film is so deeply about a deaf woman and two deaf women and their worlds. But the research is thorough. I mean, there are many moments in this where I wonder how long you stayed, like how long you were learning about the deaf community, what that process was like. You didn't just kind of start and do some cursory research. You clearly enmeshed yourself, not just in the deaf world, but in the world of people who are immersing themselves in the deaf world. And so could you talk about that process?
Yes. But I will confess that the film is made by two eggheads. So that's part of the problem, or part of the success, I guess. My husband is, in addition to being a screenwriter, is also a librarian. And he's an archivist by profession. So that's his thing. So this is, that's kind of his jam. And then I'm a university professor. I teach, and I dig archives too. So that's also my jam. So it wasn't like that hard to kind of like get into that. And I love doing research, and I love history. I always have. So it really was about just listening and like respecting the community, and like being honest and saying, I don't know anything. I need to know, and I need to understand, and I need to be able to be honest, and like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I need to be okay with that and be able to be corrected and not assume that I know things. And so like when we would send the screenplay to Michelle or to Christopher, and there was also another filmmaker who I was able to bring onto the set, Anne-Marie Bryan, or Jade. Like she's like those.
I saw her name in your credits.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh.
Yeah, so I mean those were like the core folks, and Angela Roberts, the one who plays the mother, and then Kaylin Stevens, the one who plays the sister. Those were like our core folks. So we kept going back to them and making sure that they would like help us or provide information for us. And then the members of the BDA in Chicago would constantly like make sure that we would like connect with them so that we would know what was going on. So honestly, it was really a few months, because like we already were starting to like do this, like we wanted to shoot. Like we saw Michelle, I think it was within a year. It was like, I think ITVS was like maybe in the summer before, and then we were shooting the next year, so maybe about 9 months or so afterwards. But it was once we saw her, that was it. It was like, we're doing this, and like just like studying like Carol Patton and Tom Humphrey's books, and learning, going to ASL classes in Chicago, and just trying to like learn as much as we could and incorporate as much as we could into what we were doing. Yeah, so I'm just glad that it felt honest or felt authentic for you and many other people, because we knew, I mean, the boogeyman in the room at that time was the Academy Award winning Children of a Lesser God. Not, So, I mean, you got this white man speaking for Marley Matlin. Marley Matlin is amazing, I know. But, like, the way that film is, if you look at it, it's not a good film. I'm sorry. You have to be reinterpret. He has to say everything she says, and then you don't see any of her signing. It's not good. So we knew when we saw that film as a quote-unquote Academy Award, that was not something that we were going to do. And so, like, it was really important for us to make sure that we taught the cast and the crew that when you speak to our deaf cast members, that you face them. You don't talk to the interpreter. You speak to them specifically, and then like to make sure with the cinematographer that he didn't cut off the hands. We had to shoot the close-up. You can shoot the close-ups for reactions when it was just reactions, but you couldn't shoot the close-ups and cut off the hands when the actors were using their hands to speak, because then you're cutting off their means of expression of when they're speaking. They're using their hands to speak. So it was a whole nother like, oh, wait a minute, we got to reorient ourselves, like in how we're framing, how we're composing for this. And so it was, it just took a little bit longer, and we had to like make sure we all stayed. We had to be accountable for to each other. It wasn't like, sometimes we made mistakes, but we tried to like, okay, we made a mistake, we can go back and do it again, or we can try to like correct and stuff. But like we did it, it was in the spirit of making sure that we got everything as best we could. That was the whole thing.
Yeah. And to kind of continue with some of this, I mean, I think to be, a filmmaking egghead for a second, because why not?
Yeah, we are.
We are. There's so many, I mean, not just the framing, but also there are two moments in particular that really stick out to me in terms of directing, and then in terms of like independent cinema. And so, and also the history of cinema. So three things here. So the film starts out, and it's really a very deep and overt homage to the history of silent cinema. And so, and it has all the markers of it that are immediately recognizable, the title cards, all of that. And I wonder who the piano music is for. So I know that's an immediate signifier of a silent film, but the experience of a silent film was usually to have live. It would usually be someone performing live. And so to include it here in the soundtrack is an homage to that time period, but then also that's a moment where it's not described. It's not, and I find captioning music incredibly difficult. But then you have the beautiful scene where Bill performs the dance, and the lyrics to the music, he is sign dancing, like he's performing breathing, with his entire body, not just his chest. And it's like, it shows this other way of communicating music and the spatiality and just like thoughtfulness around sign language that's then in dance that's so profoundly beautiful. And so that part is completely accessible to everyone who watches it. But also I think it's sign language and it's body movement, but it functions to me as music. And then there's this third piece of kind of like more experimental imagery and music in the very intense moment when Nico is really trying to figure out how he feels about Malaika having HIV. And it is the scene, the overhead shots of the train and the overlays of like trains going in different directions, and like that experience in Chicago of seeing the tracks underneath. And then the sound has this really beautiful equivalent to the image that's like violent and abstract. It's like absolutely experimental music, experimental cinema. So
that's our jam.
So I just like those three moments, it's a progression for me when I watch the film of like the history of cinema, and ultimately I think it's about communication and how we communicate as filmmakers. Yeah. And somewhere in here is a question, or maybe you can just like riff on this with me, but
yeah, we probably should riff. Okay, all right. So the first part. So the ragtime music, yes, it is.
Can you explain ragtime music?
Oof.
Just think of explaining it for deaf people. Like, I'm just curious of.
Oof. Okay.
Right? Captioning music is hard.
Mm-hmm. It's a type of syncopated, and I'm not a musician. That's the other part. I wish Reginald Robinson, who is the composer, was here so he could tell you, MacArthur genius that he is. But it's a very specific syncopated rhythm that was developed by early black composers.
We have a question out here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are deaf people out in the audience here. Thank you for interpreting this. But there are deaf people and interpreters, deaf culture. We would like to ask some questions. I appreciate you two communicating, but it would be beautiful if we had an opportunity to ask the creator questions.
I'm sorry I didn't say at the very beginning that I was gonna open it up to audience questions, but I'm gonna ask if you and this, I can make this my last question, but why don't we just finish this
That would be
and
beautiful,
then.
just because there's a time, I mean, it's already 9:20. Some of us are, on a schedule too. I thought it was going to be a Q&A from the audience, not necessarily just the two of you filmmakers communicating, and it's fine. But I'm just saying, we have deaf people asking questions out here to each other.
Okay, so let's finish this
That's fine.
and then we can go ahead and.
Okay,
wanna-
so I'll just finish that part then, which is that the inspiration for it is from African American culture, because ragtime culture or ragtime music came from Scott Joplin. And Scott Joplin's legacy got lost. Scott Joplin was an African American composer whose legacy got lost, like a lot of black cinema culture got lost at the very beginning of the 20th century. So that was really important to me to try to recoup it by putting it in this film. Also, the deaf performers were the ones who taught a lot of the silent film actors how to perform, because they knew how to use their bodies expressively to act in front of a camera. So that Lon Chaney, he's like the ultimate silent film performer. I'm spacing out what the film he was most famous for. Somebody help me in the audience who knows his work. The Unknown? There's another one, though, too, that he's really famous for. It'll come to me later, but thank you. But he comes from a family of deaf performers. And so he influenced the development of cinema, because he came from this family of theater performers who transitioned to film. And so I wanted to celebrate that in the film itself. And so that's how that kind of came to be within this particular film. Yeah. So I think we got that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we can go ahead and open it up to audience questions. And if you can wait until somebody's giving you the microphone.
Yeah, she has a mic.
You also mentioned to be accessible that if someone doesn't want to vocalize their question, or if they cannot, they write it on the notepad, and then I'm happy to read it.
Oh.
So I want to offer that.
Yes, so if you can also write your question on a notepad, and one of the crew will read the question for you if you would prefer to do that as well.
Is that right?
Now,
Yes, please.
may I say something
Yes.
now? Okay, all right, great. Okay, I appreciate everything that, you're speaking on as far as the history and the cinematography and your research with some of the deaf community. I was just wondering,
there is so much music, there's so much loudness. I mean, even to the extent where you hear the pencil of her writing, and that's very profound to hearing people. But I'm wondering, what is the reason why you have so much noise? And this is pertaining to deaf culture, because they get lost in all of this. I mean, and there were no, if I can make a suggestion, because I know that you're going to remake this. Somebody's remaking this.
No, it's not being remade. It's being restored.
Restored, sorry.
Yeah, that's
so
okay.
It's being restored. And with that, with all the sounds going on, what do you think about, and I'm just throwing this out, you have like a train, you have, the individuals at the school, you have all these different images on pictures. Could you have a closed caption, or could you have words stating what that is, what's going on? Because it's so loud. I mean, even as a hearing person, I got it was so much. It was so much coming at me because it's so noisy, So that's one thing that I really want to make a point. And another thing, it's interesting how you kept going back and forth from the past to the future, from the past to the future. That was kind of, the sign for it is this, and I can't say it. It's not clear. It's not clear when you go back and forth and back and forth. I was getting lost. And as far as her having HIV and then him having tuberculosis and then she having a yeast infection and then being on the beach and then in the house and then she's sewing for people, she's making dresses and everything. It was just so much. And it could have been me. I'm just lost. So I can just imagine what deaf people are, right here. I'll let her speak for herself, but me as a hearing person, I'm like, wow. I appreciate your work, your talent, your cinematography, all that's good, and I'm not taking anything away from it, and sis, please don't get offended. I'm just being my truth.
That's fine.
Okay, it's a beautiful piece of work, but for deaf culture and deaf people, it needs to be revamped.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. I will say that one of the things that one of the things that I learned from being around Michelle and Christopher and Anne-Marie was that deaf people are just like Black people and everybody else, that there are different experiences of deafness. And everybody has different ways of experiencing sound. And so I think that varied with whoever it was. Like, for instance, with Christopher became deaf at a later age. So he has more spoken language. Michelle was deaf very early. So she does not have spoken language in the same way. And her way of experiencing sound was to have music and sound super loud. When we would go places in my car, the music would be up like really loud so she could feel the vibration. She would have her leg up on the side speaker in the car so she could experience it, and I respected that. And so I tried to bring that into the film to reflect that experience. And Christopher would have his hearing aid all the way up, so you would hear that squeal of the hearing aid. And so I tried to include some of those things in the film as well. So I was just trying to play with it. And so for some people it'll work and some people it won't work, and that's okay. You take from it what you need from it and leave the rest. That's fine.
Just so you know, I have a degree in sign language interpreting. I graduated from St. Catherine University. This young lady right here, she is an interpreter. She's deaf, but she interprets as well.
Can you use a microphone?
as well, you know.
Okay.
Sorry. So I'm a sign language interpreter. I graduated from St. Catherine University back in 1994.
Yeah.
So I'm a freelance interpreter. But this young lady, I want you to know, she is an interpreter. She's deaf.
Yeah.
She's a dancer. She sings in the choir.
Wow,
She's a deacon. She's very much involved in deaf community, and I respect the deaf individuals that you talk to and communicated with, because you're absolutely right. Some deaf people can feel vibrations, some cannot. Some have cochlear implants, some do not.
Yeah.
Some feel the vibrations, some can read lips. So there is a variance with deaf culture.
Right.
So I respect you doing your research.
Right.
I'm just saying that doesn't work for everybody, what we just saw.
Okay.
She's gonna voice, right? She'll voice. Is there any other deaf people? Oh, I'll let you voice.
Are there any other deaf people here? I'm not sure if this is on. Are there any other deaf people here? I'm just wondering, are there any other deaf individuals here? No, I just wanted to see how many there were. So, I really believe in my heart that this is a great work. This is a great story that you've done here. And I am deaf. I am fully, profoundly deaf. I am dependent on sign language. That is my language. I'm a dancer. You know, I travel all over. And watching this film, I just feel like, I don't know, you're playing with that. I see the drama. I see it, you know, and you're jumping around in time, and I see how you're playing with things. But I just don't know how is this going to help the understanding of deafness. I mean, I support you. Yes, I support this, but my gut feeling is I'm just not so sure about it. I don't want to like criticize your work and everything or your team, and I see that you're pulling these people together for it. But, you know, just have three, if you only had 3 deaf individuals in it, I see that might not be enough. It seems like a more diverse body of experiences would have helped create more feedback to make this be a more successful film. Because for me, I love dance. I am a dancer through and through. But, you know, I can't experience the sound at all. And I can't, you know, there's no vibrations here. You know, if I could feel the vibrations, I'd be able to dance. I'd be able to understand it. But I couldn't feel any of the vibrations. So all of that sound was just lost. And so I just wanted you to know that. You know, there's so many deaf people all over the world, and I just would prefer to have more of that reflected in this. I want to have, you know, play around with it, get more drama in it, get more of those deaf experiences, and it would really grow this film. I do support you. I support your work, absolutely, but I just wanted to let you know about my experiences, and I think it'd be good to bring more deaf people from all over, and just to improve this, and I think that would just be better. I know I'm direct, but I just feel like God has given me a gift, and I just want to share it with you. I mean, you know, there's captions and the interpreter, but like then there's like the sound, but like what's the point of all of it? Like, you know, if the goal is the deaf experience, you know, we don't have access to the sound, you know what I mean? Like, I just really believe that we can partner better as deaf and hearing people in the world, and even just in America. I think that we can partner better together and collaborate more. And so there are some things that I disagree with a little bit, but that's just my personal feelings about it, and that's just. We need a new future together. We need to create something new going forward, not just so focused on the past right now. You know, that's not helpful. We need to focus on moving forward together and collaborating with all people all over the world. And it just kind of feels like we're just stuck. It feels like we're just kind of not facing the problem in this. And so I think that we can focus more on the positives for the future. And so I would encourage that to keep that in the mind in the future. But I love you and I love your work.
Thank you. We need more deaf filmmakers, period. We need more deaf filmmakers to tell their own stories.
I do want to just point out, though, like, this is a film with 2 black deaf people from, like, what is this, the 18, what year is Melindy and Arthur's story?
It's 1904.
1904. So, like, one who is an educated black deaf woman and one who is like a black deaf man who is acquiring 2 languages at the same time, who then gets tuberculosis. Those are 2 pretty diverse representations of deafness historically. And then you have 2 more that are in the early 90s. One who is a black deaf woman who has HIV. Like, those are wildly, wildly diverse representations of deafness that just, like, we do not get to see. And so I think, like, I want to almost, like, go down to what I think is maybe the core of what causes this sort of feeling, which is that, like, add captions in the restoration. If you can do it open, amazing. And I think that would kind of solve it all in a way. But for me, these are pretty, like, wildly, wildly diverse representations of deafness. And
Yeah, the restoration will have more open captions in it because we have the technology. We didn't have this technology back in 1999 when we released the film originally. So the technology is much better. And I'm also influenced by Tuba Thieves because you made the captioning poetic, because you made the captioning go across the screen like a haiku in a lot of ways. And I really enjoyed that. And you've pushed me as an artist to also think about the form of the captions as a form of poetry and composition. And so I will, like, use it, I think, in different ways. I'm limited. Like, you use color with your captions. I can't use color with this because my film was black and white, because that was what I could afford as a filmmaker to make this film. But I think that some of the other things that you did with using the fades and the way that the placement in the frame, I think I'll do that as I caption the restoration of the film. So thank you for that.
thank you. We have 2 more questions.
Hi, this isn't so much of a question as it is kind of just like a statement and acknowledgement. I really was floored by the representation of the Ifa religion, specifically how those 2 characters, they embodied a lot of the traditions that are associated with that in my mind. Things like, venerating your ancestors and, meditating, praying, things like that. For context, I'm a Nigerian person. I'm also Yoruba. That's specifically my ethnicity. And so seeing how my traditional religion has been, I think I'll just summarize it by saying when Malaika said, ASL is my world, I was like, Yoruba is my world. That was how I learned how to communicate in the first place. Later I learned English because we moved to America and all that stuff, but that's my initial way of understanding the world. So I just wanted to say thank you for showing that.
Ashe.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful film. You spoke about tracking Malaika down, the actor who played her. I was wondering if you could speak to the casting for the other actors, specifically Nico. I just thought they had such great chemistry, and I would love to learn more about how you went about that process, please.
Thank you for asking about my muse. I love me some John Earl Jelks. Oh my God. Oh, I love that man. You can see him now. He's on Chicago Med. He's playing Dr. Washington. So, please put positive affirmations out for me in prayers. I'm doing my best to put John and Michelle in my new film. I'm shooting this summer. I'm doing Sojourner Truth, and Phyllis Wheatley and a woman named Marie Joseph Angelique, and I'm shooting in Ohio in the summer, and I want John and Michelle to play the roles. So I'm hoping that they'll both say yes. John said yes. I just need Michelle to say yes. So anyway, but yes. But John, I've been working with John for over 30 years. We started at UCLA Film School together. Longtime collaborator. And he's always down for whatever I throw at him. He's gained weight for me. He's learned sign language for me. He's learned saxophone. He's done whatever I've asked him to do. He's really been, he's been a good trooper to do. The other person who's in the film is not an actor. The guy who plays Tyrone, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a resemblance there. It's my brother. My brother got mad at me because, I was the poor grad student, and my brother was the one who became the engineer and made the money in the family. So when I was a grad student, he would send me money so I could make my films at UCLA. He's like, you put daddy in the movies, how come you never put me in the movie? And so I was like, okay, bro, you could be in the movie.
You gave him the least sympathetic role, too.
But guess what? The only time John Earl Jelks ever messed up his lines was because of my brother. It was because my brother did not read the script. My brother totally improv those lines.
Wow. I mean, I hate that scene. I hate that scene on an emotional level, but it's so authentic. It is so the representation of people joking about making stupid deaf jokes. I hate deaf jokes. And that scene is just like a knife to the chest, but it's so real. Oh.
Right. And guess what? The woman that my brother is with in the warehouse when they watch that's his real wife. That's his fiance. At the time, that was his fiance.
Wait, the woman who was trying to do applause?
Yeah.
She was like...
Yeah. So he got so much crap after she found out that he's like, you were talking about me? I was like, I didn't say nothing. I just walked out. I was like, So, but yeah. So it was again one of those ones where we kind of cast people for who they were. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So, but the other folks that were in the film, was anybody else you were specifically wanted to know more about? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. No, it was mostly folks. I was living in Chicago at the time, so most of the other cast members were from Chicago specifically. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question, and then I think that's probably the end, right? Okay, I would like to know, Zeinabu, how it feels to know this many years later that your film is so meaningful to a generation of disabled artists and filmmakers. And did you foresee that at all?
No, I did not foresee that. And it feels really good because it was devastating. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It was devastating. Compensation played or premiered at Toronto and Sundance. We were in dramatic competition and nothing happened. No distribution. I never got any, directing gigs. The actors got a couple roles. Michelle was on the TV series Girlfriends. John got a few TV spots, but nothing really ever came out of that. So it was kind of disappointing, and I kind of did go into a depression to some degree. But this film is 25 years later. Y'all are still people watching it. It means a lot to people like you or like a whole lot of people. So it's like, yo, what other films from Sundance 2000 do you know? Ha! Bite me, you know? So
It's so true.
so
It's so true.
it's like, you know, so like I don't make a lot of films, but the films that I make are evergreen. So it's like, okay. And it's going to have a theatrical release, you know, this fall. So I'm like, okay. So it takes a little while for things to catch up with us, but, you know, it's okay. It's okay. So things happen when they're supposed to happen, and that's all good. I'm not mad about that. So it's all good. It's all good. So thank you guys. Thank you. Thanks for thank you all for coming to see films as a community and experience and talking to us about how you feel about it. Even if you liked it or you didn't like it. I just like being in community with people to be able to see films as a group. You know, we were isolated from each other for so long and not being able to talk and see films. So I just really will always treasure this experience of being able to be with audiences. Thank you.